ever make a decision, like in the blink of an eye, and just been like totally spot on? You just knew it was the right call. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Even if you couldn't explain why.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we're diving into today.
I love it.
The fascinating world of snap judgments, gut feelings,
Yeah.
all that,
Yes.
as explored in Malcolm Gladwell's Blink.
Blink. Such a good book. Really unpacks the power of thinking without thinking.
It really is.
Shows how our brains make these like lightning fast decisions based on years of experience and subconscious processing. It's wild.
Yeah, and we are dissecting excerpts from the book itself.
Oh, nice.
And trust me, there's some mind-blowing stories and research in here. We're going to uncover how these blinks actually work when they're reliable, and they can lead us astray.
I'm excited.
And get this understanding, this stuff can change.
Yeah.
How you make decisions, how you hire people,
Yes.
even choose a romantic partner.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of power.
So buckle up, because this deep dive is going to be a wild ride. And hey, while you're at it, why not hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes? We got a ton of fascinating deep dives coming your way.
Absolutely. So Gladwell kicks things off with a story about the Getty Museum and their acquisition of a statue,
Okay.
a kouros, supposedly from ancient Greece.
Interesting.
They were beyond excited about this purchase, poured tons of money into scientific analysis, carbon dating, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
And all the evidence pointed to it being authentic.
So they thought they had a real deal.
They did. They really did. But here's where it gets juicy. Several experts, upon seeing the kouros, were hit with this wave of intuitive repulsion.
What? Intuitive repulsion.
Yeah, they just knew something was off,
Really?
despite the mountain of evidence saying otherwise.
So all the signs pointed to it being legit, but they had this feeling like something's not right.
Exactly. Their gut was screaming fake.
Wow. So what happened?
And guess what? They were right.
No way.
The statue ended up being a forgery. This story really highlights how powerful our intuition can be. Sometimes our unconscious mind picks up on discrepancies that our conscious mind completely misses.
It's like our gut is sending us a signal saying, hey, something's not right here. But do we always listen to those signals?
Right.
And what happens when we ignore them? That's something to ponder, right?
Absolutely. It's a big question.
This reminds me, we actually have a whole video on our YouTube channel about how to develop your intuition. You should definitely check it out after this episode.
Oh, for sure. I'll link it below.
Perfect.
So this idea of making accurate judgments based on limited information is what Gladwell calls thin slicing.
Thin slicing.
Yeah. It's the ability to extract meaning from just a thin slice of experience.
Oh, I like that.
He uses the example of John Gottman, this psychologist who can predict whether a couple will stay together or divorce with shocking accuracy.
No way. Seriously.
And get this, he does it just by watching them interact for a few minutes.
Really? So he can predict the future of their relationship based on just a few minutes of observation.
Exactly. Think about that. Years of marriage counseling condensed into a few minutes of observation. Pretty incredible, right?
That's wild. How does he even do that?
So Gottman's system is fascinating. It analyzes these tiny details in the couple's communication, facial expressions, tone of voice, even body language.
Huh.
And from these subtle cues, he can identify patterns that reveal the underlying health of their relationship.
So it's not just some mystical sixth sense. It's about picking up on these subtle cues that most people wouldn't even notice.
Exactly. And this ability is powered by what Gladwell calls the adaptive unconscious.
Adaptive unconscious.
Yeah, it's like our inner computer constantly processing information below our level of awareness, making lightning-fast decisions based on years of accumulated knowledge and experience.
It's like, think about walking across the street.
Okay, yeah.
You don't consciously think about every step, every movement, right? Your brain just does it based on years of learned patterns and responses.
Precisely. The adaptive unconscious allows us to navigate complex situations without needing to consciously analyze every single detail.
So it's not just random. Our gut feelings are actually based on real information, even if we can't quite articulate it.
Exactly. It's all based on our past experiences, the patterns our brains have picked up on.
But like any computer, sometimes our adaptive unconscious can make mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's when those snap judgments, those blinks, can lead us astray.
Right. And one of the biggest dangers is what Gladwell calls the Warren Harding error.
Warren Harding error. What's that?
This is when we overemphasize superficial qualities and make judgments based on appearances rather than substance.
Oh, I see.
He uses the example of President Harding's election, where people were so drawn to his good looks and charisma that they overlooked his lack of qualifications.
Oh, wow.
Which, as history shows, led to some pretty disastrous consequences.
Yeah, I can see how that could be a problem.
Yeah.
letting those surface-level impressions cloud our judgment.
It's a classic example of how our snap judgments can be influenced by things that have nothing to do with actual competence or ability.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap?
Well, that's a great question. And speaking of these unconscious biases, Gladwell talks about this fascinating tool called the implicit association test, or IAT.
Okay, I've heard of that IET.
It measures the strength of our associations between concepts and evaluations, revealing hidden biases that we might not even be aware of.
It's a bit of a wake-up call,
Mm-hmm.
showing how these biases can influence our decisions in areas like hiring, even if we believe ourselves to be fair and impartial.
Right. It challenges our assumptions about ourselves and how we see the world.
We did a whole deep dive on the IAT a few episodes back, and it was one of our most popular episodes yet. Make sure to check out our YouTube channel where you can find that episode and a whole bunch of other great content. You won't regret it.
Absolutely. Go check it out.
Okay, so we've got these snap judgments driven by our adaptive unconscious, which can be incredibly accurate, but also prone to biases and errors.
Right. It's a double-edged sword.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
How do we know when to trust our gut and when to take a step back and think things through?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's what we'll explore next as we delve into more fascinating stories and research from Blink.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
One of the most fascinating stories Gladwell shares is about this musician named Kenna.
Kenna.
Yeah. He was getting rave reviews from music industry experts and amazing reactions from live audiences.
Sounds promising.
Right. But he just couldn't seem to break into the mainstream.
Huh. It's like he had all the ingredients for success, but something wasn't clicking.
Exactly. What was holding him back?
Yeah, what was it?
Well, it turned out that traditional market research methods like surveys and focus groups just couldn't predict his success.
Oh, interesting.
People weren't consciously aware of why they weren't connecting with his music on a broader level.
So, like, they couldn't really articulate why they didn't love it.
Right. And this is where the limitations of self-reported data come into play. Sometimes people's stated preferences don't actually align with their gut reactions, those immediate visceral responses that happen in a blink.
It's like what they say they want and what they actually want are two different things.
Exactly. And this reminds me of another classic example from the book The Pepsi Challenge. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah. How could I forget? Pepsi was crushing Coke in blind taste tests.
Right.
So Coke decided to revamp their formula, creating New Coke, which was sweeter and supposedly more appealing to the masses. But it was a total flop. What happened there? People said they preferred the sweeter taste. So why didn't New Coke take off?
Because those taste tests were only capturing a thin slice of the experience.
Ah, I see.
People might have preferred the sweeter taste of Pepsi in a single sip,
Okay.
but that didn't translate to long-term preference. When it came to drinking a whole can or bottle in the context of their everyday lives, people realized they actually preferred the familiar taste of classic Coke.
I guess you don't really know until you live with something for a while.
Yeah, it's about the whole experience, not just a fleeting moment.
That's a great point. And it highlights a crucial point. Context matters. Our snap judgments are influenced by the situation, our past experiences, even our current mood.
Absolutely. A sweeter drink might seem appealing in isolation, but when you factor in all those other elements, the picture can change completely.
It's like trying to judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. You're not getting the full picture of its capabilities. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Blink, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We break down complex topics like this all the time, making them fun and accessible for everyone. Plus, we have some really cool visuals and animations that bring these concepts to life. You don't want to miss out.
Definitely check it out. We put a lot of work into it.
So speaking of context, another fascinating story from Blink highlights the power of expertise.
Oh, yeah.
It's about Paul Van Riper, a retired military commander who completely outmaneuvered the U.S. military in a war game simulation.
He was a legend.
Wait, seriously, he beat the U.S. military. How is that even possible? Didn't they have all the latest technology, sophisticated algorithms, tons of data at their fingertips?
They did. But Van Riper had something they didn't. Years of experience and a deep understanding of battlefield dynamics.
Ah, so it's not just about the tech. It's about the human element, too.
Exactly. He relied on his intuition, his ability to quickly assess the situation and make decisions on the fly, and it completely threw off the other team.
Wow, so experience trumps data in some cases.
It can. His story illustrates how expertise allows us to thin slice effectively. When we have deep knowledge and experience in a particular domain, our brains can quickly process information and make accurate judgments, even in complex and unpredictable situations.
It's like he was able to see the whole chessboard while they were focused on individual pieces.
That's a great analogy. He was operating on a different level.
Well, it's not just about having a good gut. It's about developing that gut instinct through years of practice and focused attention.
Precisely. And that brings us to another important point. Sometimes less is more. Gladwell shares this incredible story about Cook County Hospital in Chicago.
Cook County Hospital?
Yeah, where they were struggling to accurately diagnose patients coming in with chest pain.
Chest pain. That's scary stuff. It could be so many things.
Right. It's a tough one to diagnose. How did they manage to improve their diagnoses? Did they invest in new equipment? Hire more specialists?
I'm curious to hear this.
Surprisingly, no. They actually developed a simple algorithm based on a handful of key indicators
Interesting.
that help doctors make faster and more accurate diagnoses.
Really? So they simplified things instead of making them more complex.
Exactly. By stripping away all the extraneous information and focusing on the essentials, they were able to streamline the decision-making process and significantly improve patient outcomes.
Wow. So sometimes having too much information can actually hinder our ability to make good decisions. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. The more hay you have, the harder it is to find the needle. But if you can narrow down the search area, you increase your chances of success.
That's a great way to put it. The Cook County Hospital story is a powerful reminder that we need to be selective with our information, to focus on what truly matters, and to avoid getting bogged down by extraneous details.
So we talked about the Getty-Koros, John Gottman's marriage studies, the Warren Harding error, the Pepsi Challenge, Paul Van Riper's war game expertise, and now Cook County Hospital's streamlined approach to diagnosis. What's the common thread here? What's the big takeaway from all of these stories?
The common thread is that our snap judgments, those blinks, are a powerful and often overlooked aspect of our mental lives. They can be incredibly accurate and insightful,
I'm starting to see that.
but they can also be influenced by biases, context, and our own desire for certainty.
So it's not just about listening to our gut blindly. There's more to it than that.
Exactly. Blink is a call to understand this hidden world of thinking without thinking,
Yeah.
to become more aware of both the power and the pitfalls of our intuition.
That makes sense. It's like we need to be aware of how our brains work, how these snap judgments are formed, and how we can hone our instincts to make them more reliable.
Precisely. And that's where things get really exciting. Because once we understand how blinks work, we can start to control them, to shape them, to make them work for us rather than against us.
Wait, control our instincts? Is that even possible? How do we do that?
Well, one of the most powerful ways is through experience. The more we practice making judgments in a specific domain, the more refined our instincts become. Think about those food experts Gladwell describes. They can taste a spoonful of jam and instantly identify subtle flavor notes, ingredients, even the brand.
That's true. I remember that part.
Right.
They could even tell if the jam was made with fresh fruit or concentrate. It's amazing how much information they could glean from just a taste.
Exactly. Their expertise allows them to thin slice effectively because they've trained their unconscious minds to pick up on those subtle but meaningful cues.
So it's not just about innate talent or being born with a good gut. It's something we can develop through practice and focused attention.
Absolutely. It's like learning to play a musical instrument or mastering a sport. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to make mistakes along the way.
That's encouraging. So what's the final verdict on Blink? What should we take away from all of these stories and insights?
The biggest takeaway for me is that we should embrace our snap judgments, but not blindly. We need to understand their power, their limitations, and the factors that can influence them. We need to hone our instincts through experience awareness and a willingness to challenge our assumptions.
And maybe most importantly, we need to recognize that sometimes less is more, focusing on the essential information. Stripping away the noise can actually lead to clearer and more accurate decisions.
Precisely. So the next time you get that gut feeling, don't dismiss it outright. Pay attention, explore it, but also consider the context, your own biases, and the potential for error. It's a delicate balance between trusting your instincts and thinking things through.
And that's what makes Blink such a thought-provoking book. It challenges us to reconsider how we make decisions, how we interact with the world, and how we understand the hidden workings of our own minds.
It's a fascinating exploration of human cognition, and I highly recommend checking it out.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into Blink. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the power of thin slicing to the dangers of unconscious bias and the importance of expertise. Hopefully you've gained some valuable insights into how your own mind works and how you can make
Until next time. Keep those blinks sharp and stay curious.